The lonely sister table was positioned near the emergency exit at the Sterling Hall, where my sister Jessica's wedding reception glittered with champagne towers and imported orchids. Table 21. I sat alone at a table meant for 8, the empty chairs around me a visual monument to my single status. From my corner by the exit sign, I could barely see the head table where Jessica and her husband Brandon celebrated with their coupled friends. "We can't waste prime seating on Cassie," Mom had announced at yesterday's family brunch, loud enough for half the restaurant to hear. "No +1 for the lonely sister. She's 35 and still alone. Let's not draw attention to it." Jessica had nodded sympathetically, as if my unmarried status was a tragic medical condition requiring careful management. What they didn't know, what I'd been legally prohibited from discussing until funding closed this week, was that my lonely life included founding Neurotech Solutions, a medical technology startup that had just secured $200 million in Series C funding. Our brain-computer interface technology was being tested in partnership with Stanford Medical and 3 international hospitals. "Some tech startup thing that probably won't work out," Dad had explained to Brandon's family at the rehearsal dinner. "Nothing stable like Jessica's marketing director position. Real career, steady paycheck." My unstable startup was valued at $1.2 billion as of Thursday. But venture capital valuations weren't dinner party conversation, so they didn't exist. My phone buzzed, the private line I used for major investors. I slipped into the empty hallway, away from the reception and Mom's disapproving glances. "Winters," I answered. "Ms. Winters, Mr. Chen's helicopter is landing in 6 minutes, his assistant Michelle said. "He wanted to confirm you received his message." "I did. Please tell him I appreciate him coming." The message had arrived this morning. "Cassie, closed 3 deals this week. Need a break. Mind if I crash your sister's wedding? Time they understood who you really are. David. Security advance team is already on site. The venue manager has been briefed on Mr. Chen's requirements." "Perfect. See you both shortly." I returned to table 21 as the main course arrived, for everyone except me. The servers had apparently forgotten the lonely sister table existed. From my position by the emergency exit, I watched Jessica's perfect wedding unfold like a performance I wasn't invited to join. The toasts began. Brandon's best man told corporate consulting stories. Jessica's maid of honor, our cousin Rachel, gave a speech about finding your person, with a pitying glance toward my empty table that made several guests turn to stare. "Some of us are blessed to find complete happiness," Rachel continued, her voice dripping with false sympathy. "Career success, romantic fulfillment, the whole package. Others focus solely on work, and that's a choice." Polite murmurs rippled through the room. Mom smiled tightly from table 3, where she sat with Brandon's parents. Dad studied his wine glass, probably relieved the attention wasn't on him. My phone buzzed. 3 minutes. I stood and walked toward the entrance, ignoring the coordinator who tried to redirect me back to my corner of shame. The venue's manager, Thomas, met me near the doors. I'd briefed him yesterday with documentation that included net worth statements and security protocols. "Ms. Winters, the advance team has cleared the perimeter," he whispered, his earlier skepticism replaced by barely contained excitement. "I had no idea you knew David Chin. We've worked together for 3 years. He's my lead investor." I watched through the windows as 2 black SUVs pulled up, followed by a Mercedes Maybach with tinted windows. "Thomas, let him enter naturally. No announcement. You want me to let a billionaire just walk in?" He specifically requested casual entry. The security team entered first, former Secret Service and military, discreet but unmistakably professional. Then David Chin appeared in the doorway. He was 42, self-made tech billionaire, former CEO of Chin Innovations before selling it for $8 billion, and now one of the most sought-after venture investors in Silicon Valley. Forbes ranked him number 17 on their billionaire list. TechCrunch called him the kingmaker of medical technology. And he was my mentor, my lead investor, and the person who'd believed in my technology when everyone else said it was impossible. "Cassie." His voice carried across the reception, cutting through the classical music. "There you are." Every head turned. David crossed the room with the confident stride of someone who'd built empires from ideas. His security detail maintained professional distance. He walked past table 3, where Mom had actually dropped her fork, past the head table where Jessica's champagne glass froze halfway to her lips, past all the coupled tables filled with successful pairs, straight to table 21 by the emergency exit. He embraced me warmly. "Sorry I'm late. Board meeting in Singapore ran over. But I couldn't miss celebrating with you." He glanced around, taking in the empty chairs, the isolated position, the emergency exit sign glowing above us. "Interesting seating choice. Usually we seat the founder and CEO somewhere more prominent." The silence was deafening. Brandon's father, a corporate executive who'd spent cocktail hour discussing market trends, had actually stood up from his chair, recognition dawning on his face. "David, you didn't have to fly in for this," I said, following our loosely planned script. "Are you kidding? After the week we've had? After closing the Series C at a $1.2 billion valuation? After Stanford confirmed the clinical trial results exceeded projections?" He smiled. "Besides, I wanted to meet the family you've mentioned. Though I'm curious why they seated our billion-dollar CEO at the emergency exit." Behind him, one of the servers had dropped an entire tray of champagne glasses. The crash echoed through the stunned ballroom. Thomas appeared, suddenly professional. "Mr. Chin, we weren't informed of your attendance. We have premium seating available." "I'll sit with Cassie," David said easily, settling into one of the empty chairs. His security detail repositioned discreetly. "Though you might want to actually bring her some food. Seems like everyone forgot she exists back here." Jessica had descended from the head table, Brandon trailing behind, both looking like they were approaching royalty unprepared. "Cassie, you never mentioned you knew, that you worked with." "You never asked about my work," I said calmly. "You called it some tech thing. You stopped asking about my company years ago because you assumed it had failed." "We should have been informed," Brandon's mother said, having rushed over with barely concealed panic. "If we'd known someone of Mr. Chen's stature was attending." "I'm not here because of my stature," David said coolly. "I'm here because Cassie Winters is one of the most brilliant entrepreneurs I've ever backed. I'm here because her technology is going to change how we treat neurological conditions. I'm here because in 3 years she's built something extraordinary." He paused meaningfully. "And I wanted to see the family that somehow decided she belonged by the emergency exit." Brandon's father had gone pale. As someone who followed tech markets, he clearly knew exactly who David Chin was and what his presence meant. Mom had pushed through the growing crowd, Dad hovering behind. "Cassie, sweetheart, we had no idea your startup was so successful. You never said." "I tried to tell you. Multiple times. You called it unstable. You compared it unfavorably to Jessica's marketing job. You stopped asking because you assumed I'd failed." "But if we'd known it was worth billions," Dad started. "That's exactly the problem. My work had value when it was worth nothing. When I was coding 18-hour days in a tiny apartment. When I was pitching to investors who said a woman couldn't lead a medical tech company. But you only care now because David Chin is sitting at table 21. David pulled out his phone, projecting an image on his screen for the gathering crowd. "This is from Thursday's TechCrunch article. Neurotech Solutions closes $200 million Series C at unicorn valuation. Cassie Winters named among top 10 medtech innovators." He scrolled. "Here's the Stanford Medical Press release about our clinical trials. Here's the Forbes profile on Cassie from last month. Here's the patent filings that are revolutionizing brain-computer interfaces." Jessica's face had gone completely white. Rachel, the maid of honor, stood frozen with her phone out, clearly Googling my name and discovering articles she'd never bothered to read. "Your sister," David continued, addressing Jessica directly, "has secured partnerships with 3 of the top 10 hospitals in the world. Her technology is being peer-reviewed in Nature Medicine. She's been invited to present at the World Health Organization. But apparently that's less important than finding a date to a wedding." Phones had appeared throughout the room. David Chin at a Virginia wedding was already trending. Tech journalists were picking up the story. Jessica's carefully curated society wedding was transforming into viral content about family dynamics and success. One of Brandon's groomsmen, apparently a tech investor himself, approached shakily. "Mr. Chin, I'm Marcus Webb from Highland Ventures. We've been trying to get a meeting with Neurotech for 6 months. You'll need to go through proper channels," David said dismissively. "Though I should mention that Cassie's calendar is fully booked through next year." Series C investors get priority access. Thomas had arranged a proper table, moving us from the emergency exit to a hastily prepared setting near the windows. But everyone had seen where I'd been seated. The wedding photographer's video footage, already being shared online, showed the lonely sister table in all its isolated glory. Mom approached our new table, tears streaming down her carefully made-up face. "Cassie, we're so proud of you. We just didn't understand." "You didn't want to understand, Mom. You wanted me to fit your definition of success. Husband, conventional job, traditional life. When I chose a different path, you treated it as failure." "We can fix this," Jessica said desperately, having joined us. "We'll support you now. Come to family dinners. Celebrate your achievements." "I don't need your support now," I said quietly. "I needed it 3 years ago when I was terrified and maxing out credit cards to keep the company alive. I needed it when investors told me to find a male co-founder for credibility. I needed it every time you asked when I'd get a real job." I paused. "But I built a billion-dollar company anyway. Without you." David stood, his presence commanding absolute attention. "Cassie Winters represents the future of medical technology. She's brilliant, driven, and has created something that will help millions of patients. The fact that she's done it while being dismissed by her own family makes it even more impressive." He turned to the room at large. "The lonely sister? He's changing the world. She's a CEO. She's an innovator. And she's never been alone. She has a team of 50 employees, a board that believes in her vision, and investors who trust her with hundreds of millions in capital." The room erupted in awkward applause. Brandon's tech investor friends were frantically pulling up my company information. Jessica's society friends were discovering that the pitted single sister was actually a featured founder in every major tech publication. Rachel, the cousin who'd made the "it's a choice" comment, approached hesitantly. "Cassie, I had no idea. You never posted about your success on social media." "I've been busy building something real," I said. "Not performing success for likes. Actually creating value." David checked his watch. "We should go. Early flight to San Francisco tomorrow. Stanford wants to discuss expanding the clinical trials." I nodded, then looked at my family one last time. "Congratulations on your marriage, Jessica. I mean that sincerely. But understand this. I'm done accepting crumbs of respect. Either you value me for who I am, successful or not, partnered or not, conventional or not, or we maintain polite distance. Those are the boundaries." As we walked toward the exit, David, me, and the security detail that had turned Jessica's reception into a spectacle, guests parted instinctively. The corporate executives tried to network. The tech investors attempted to pitch meetings. Mom reached out, but I kept walking. Outside, David's car waited. "Too dramatic?" he asked with a slight smile. "Perfect amount," I said. "Thank you for coming. Thank you for the entertainment. Though I meant what I said, you've built something extraordinary. With or without family support." My phone was exploding with notifications. The wedding hashtag was trending, but the narrative had shifted entirely. Videos of the lonely sister reveal were going viral. Comments ranged from shock at the family's treatment to celebration of my success to think pieces about how society dismisses single women in STEM. By morning, I'd have interview requests from major outlets. By next week, the publicity would drive recruitment and investor interest beyond anything we'd planned. Jessica called. I let it go to voicemail. Mom texted, "Please call. We need to talk." "We're so sorry." I silenced my personal phone and checked my work messages. Stanford had sent the expanded trial protocols. Our CFO confirmed 3 acquisition offers we'd need to review. My head of engineering wanted approval on the next-generation prototype. David handed me a tablet. "Tomorrow's Wall Street Journal is running a feature on you. The billion-dollar CEO nobody knew. It's excellent press." I skimmed the article, professional, focused on the technology and business success, with only a brief mention of the wedding incident that had sparked viral interest. "The lonely sister," I said softly. "That's what they called me." "Let them," David replied. "While they were worried about your +1 status, you were changing the field of neurotechnology. While they seated you by emergency exits, you were building emergency solutions for patients who had no other options. While they pitted you, you were making history." He was right. They'd called me the lonely sister and hidden me away. Tomorrow, I'd be in Stanford's labs, advancing technology that could restore mobility to paralyzed patients. They dismissed my work as an unstable startup. The market called it a unicorn company. They tried to make my single status the story. I'd made breakthrough medical technology the story instead. As we drove away from Sterling Hall, I took one last look at the lit ballroom where Jessica's perfect wedding had become a viral lesson in assumptions and respect. The emergency exit was behind me. The future I'd built was ahead. And I'd never been lonely at all. I'd been exactly where I needed to be, working too hard to notice.